stakeholders. I am pleased to update that the Charter has been signed with the OIC. This is the first but very pivotal step that will pave the way for operationalization of the fund. The IDB is strongly committed to ensuring strict policies and guidelines to govern all of the fund's activities. Accordingly, we guarantee utmost transparency in all aspects of the fund's activities and adherence to the relevant international standards and best practices. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, given the gravity of the challenges facing Afghanistan today, no single entity or institution can tackle them alone. Instead, there is a consensus that the international community needs to collectively provide a holistic, practical, sustainable, and comprehensive solution, learning from the lessons of the past and leveraging the strengths of all stakeholders to address these daunting challenges. Since last December, the Bank has had continuous coordination and consultations with the OIC, development partners, humanitarian organizations, and donors. We have also consulted with countries interested in supporting the Afghani people. We are committed to benefiting from all relevant experiences and exploring potential cooperation opportunities to ensure formulation of an impactful partnership to undertake collective efforts to achieve the fund's objectives. Since 76% of the Afghanistan population lives in rural areas, a primary focus of the fund will be to save lives by preserving rural livelihoods. An integrated, holistic approach is proposed to be adopted to ensure that the fund's limited resources are deployed most effectively to yield maximum developmental impact. We are also keen to leverage local community development councils, especially in rural communities, to design and implement various initiatives under the fund to enhance local ownership. We are committed to working with all our partners to break the prevalent vicious cycle of poverty and initiate a virtuous cycle of hope and self-reliance in the country. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, depending on the fund's funding amounts and possible replenishments, a comprehensive phased approach will be adopted to promote long-term peace and stability. This can be achieved by enhancing agricultural productivity to promote food security, ensuring access to quality education, especially for females, provisioning of health care facilities in rural communities, women and youth empowerment, as well as facilitating rural electrification. The fund, in close coordination with our partners, is also actively exploring potential opportunities to leverage the private sector to support the humanitarian efforts, especially by focusing on creating meaningful employment opportunities in agro-business through supporting micro and small-medium enterprises. The Islamic Development Bank is also ideally positioned to provide the necessary platform for neighboring and regional member countries to play a positive role by optimally leveraging the IDB's South-South cooperation program. Benefiting from the experience, expertise, and knowledge of several OIC and Islamic Development Bank member countries, the Islamic Development Bank, under the overall umbrella of the fund, is keen to facilitate the capacity building in key sectors such as banking and finance, medicine, and agriculture. We expect Islamic finance, particularly Islamic social finance instruments such as zakat, to play an essential role in facilitating resource mobilization and successful delivery of the programs. We look forward to the generous support of all OIC countries, international, regional, and bilateral organizations, the private sector, and philanthropists. The success of this fund will not be of credit to a single individual, entity, or institution, but to all of humanity. I reiterate the Islamic Development Bank's continued commitment to work closely with our partners and the international community to fully synchronize all efforts to ensure we collectively deliver sustainable support to Afghanistan, fostering resilience and self-reliance. Excellencies, distinguished guests, I take this opportunity to express our sincere appreciation to the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation and the OIC Special Envoy for all their efforts to promote the Afghanistan Humanitarian Trust Fund globally. I would also like to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for this vital initiative whereby we take the lead in helping our fellow Muslims. Special thanks go to Nigeria for being the first country to make a pledge. We are confident other countries and donors will follow suit. I also extend my special thanks to the government of Pakistan for its generosity and hospitality, and also congratulate the people and the government of Pakistan on the occasion of this 75th anniversary of independence. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your statement. We are moving closer to the closure of the inaugural session. May I request Excellencies to take your seats, and I'd like to see the House in order before I invite our special guest to come to the rostrum for his statement. Please take your seats. People standing at the back, I would request you to please take your seats. Thank you. Excellencies, today we have with us His Excellency Mr. Wang Yi, State Councillor, Foreign Minister of the People's Republic of China, as a special guest. I now request him to come to the rostrum for his statement. State Councillor Wang Yi.
尊敬的伊姆兰汗总理，尊敬的库里希外长、塔哈秘书长，各位同事、各位兄弟、各位好朋友，非常高兴应邀出席伊斯兰合作组织外长会的开幕式，并有机会发表致辞。这是中国外长首次参加伊斯兰合作组织的外长会，充分体现了中国同伊斯兰世界加强交流合作的真诚愿望，必将推动我们的双方关系迈上新的台阶。中华文明同伊斯兰文明都是世界上有重要影响的古老文明，双方的交往绵延千年，历经国际风云变幻的考验，有着深厚的历史底蕴和坚实的民意基础。友好始终是双方关系的主流。
Equality is always the foundation of our interaction, and mutual benefit is always the goal of our cooperation. Over the years, we are always committed to mutual respect and trust and support each other's core concerns. China will never forget
把中国抬进了联合国。同样，在伊斯兰世界最为关注的巴勒斯坦问题上，中国的支持从未犹豫，从未缺席。我们始终坚持团结互助，致力发展，实现共同发展。疫情爆发后，伊斯兰国家第一时间给予中国宝贵的支持，中国也及时向50个伊斯兰国家提供了13亿剂疫苗以及大量的抗疫物资。共建“一带一路”已经成为双方走向发展繁荣的桥梁和纽带。中国迄今已经同54个 伊斯兰国家签署了合作文件，开展了将近600个大型的合作项目，资金投资的总额达到了4000亿美元，给双方人民带来了实实在在的利益。我们始终坚持互学互鉴，守护世界的多样文明。中华文明和伊斯兰文明历史上都对人类文明做出过重大的贡献，而近代以来，我们也都受到了不公正的对待。现在，我们正携手迈上发展复兴之路。我们要大力倡导文明平等对话、交流互鉴，从彼此的悠久文明中汲取智慧，共同抵制文明歧视，共同反对文明冲突。应该说，中国和伊斯兰世界已经找到了一条不同文明友好相处、合作共赢的道路，成为践行新型国际关系的典范，对不同国家、不同文明之间如何交往提供了有益的经验。各位同事、各位朋友，面对动荡变革的世界，本届伊核组织外长会聚焦结伴实现团结、公正、发展这一主题，反映了世界上大多数国家的共同心声。中方愿意同一方一道，倡导真正的多边主义，捍卫联合国宪章的宗旨原则，维护以联合国为核心的国际体系，在追求民族复兴的道路上风雨同舟，携手同行。中国愿意同伊斯兰世界建设4个伙伴关系：一是做团结协作的伙伴，相互坚定支持彼此捍卫国家的主权、独立和领土完整，坚定支持彼此独立自主地探索符合本国国情的发展道路，坚定支持彼此维护自身的正当发展权益和广大发展中国家的共同利益。二是做发展振兴的伙伴，继续团结抗疫。下阶段，中方将继续向伊斯兰国家提供3亿剂疫苗，助力各国构筑健康防线。我们将继续加强发展战略对接，以高质量共建“一带一路”和携手落实全球发展倡议为双引擎，巩固传统合作，培育新兴亮点，助力中伊发展振兴，引领南南合作潮流，为实现联合国2030年可持续发展议程注入强劲动力。三是做安全稳定的伙伴，中方将继续支持伊斯兰国家运用伊斯兰的智慧，解决当前的热点问题，把维稳促和的钥匙牢牢掌握在自己的手中。中方将继续坚定站在巴勒斯坦人民一边，支持在2国方案基础上推动早日召开更具权威性和代表性的国际和会，促进巴勒斯坦问题的全面、公正解决。中方将尊重阿富汗人民自己做出的选择，支持阿富汗实现包容建政、稳健治理，开启和平重建新的篇章。在克什米尔问题上，我们今天再次听到了很多伊斯兰朋友的呼声。中方和大家一样，我们抱有同样的愿望。中方也支持俄罗斯和乌克兰继续和谈，谈出停火，谈出止战，谈出和平。要防止发生人道主义灾难， 要避免乌克兰危机外溢影响和损害其他地区和国家的正当权益。40座文明互鉴的伙伴，共同弘扬和平、发展、公平、正义、民主、自由的全人类共同价值，反对意识形态划线，制造分裂对抗，坚持不同文明交流互鉴，反对文明优越论，反对文明冲突论，反对对非西方文明的歪曲和抹黑，深化预防性反恐和去极端化的合作，抵制反恐的双重标准，反对将恐怖主义同特定的民族、宗教挂钩。各位同事，历史已经证明，并将继续证明，中国是伊斯兰世界的真诚朋友和合作伙伴。我们愿意同伊斯兰国家一道，共同促进世界格局多极化、国际关系民主化、人类文明多样化，为构建人类命运共同体而不懈努力。最后，再次感谢巴基斯坦成功主办今天的外长会，也对巴基斯坦的国庆日表示我们最衷心的祝贺。预祝会议圆满成功，谢谢各位。
Thank you, Excellency, for your insightful remarks. We are grateful indeed for your gracious presence. I now request His Excellency, Mr. Imran Khan, Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, to make his keynote address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in.
In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, Thy aid do we seek, and Thy do we worship.
Foreign Minister, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al-Saud, Honorable Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, Royal Highnesses, Honorable Foreign Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me welcome you with great joy and happiness on this 48th Foreign Ministers OIC meeting. And it's being held in Islamabad at a time when we are celebrating our 75th anniversary of our independence. So I want to warmly welcome you. I hope you have a great stay here. And from the people of Pakistan, they are overjoyed that all of you are here and on this special occasion. Today I want to especially congratulate our OIC members because of a landmark resolution passed in the United Nations declaring 15th March as a day to combat Islamophobia. But I want to remind people why 15th of March. 15th of March was a day when a gunman walked into a mosque in New Zealand and shot dead 50 people. Why did he shoot them? Because he felt that all Muslims were terrorists. Where did this Islamophobia grow and was allowed to keep growing? After 9/11. What happened after 9/11? Unfortunately, this narrative of Islamic terrorism Islamic radicalism. This narrative went on unchecked. Respected foreign ministers, I have spent a lot of my life in England, touring all over the world as an international sportsman. And I understand the Western civilization probably much better than most people. I went to university there and then used to spend half my year playing sports in the summer in England. Now, I saw this growing. After 9/11, this Islamophobia kept growing. And the reason was, I'm sorry to say, that we, the Muslim countries, did not do anything to check this wrong narrative. How can any religion have anything to do with terrorism? How was Islam equated with terrorism? And once that happens, how is the man in the street in Western countries, how is he supposed to differentiate between a moderate Muslim and a radical Muslim? How can he differentiate? Hence, this man walks into a mosque and shoots everyone he could. Unfortunately, what should have been done and wasn't, the heads of Muslim countries should have taken a stand on this. But instead, a lot of heads of state kept saying things like, well, we are moderate. The moment you say you're a moderate Muslim, you automatically say that there is some extreme form of Islam. Our head of state at the time, after 9/11, he coined a phrase called Enlightened Moderation. I understand English better than most. I still don't know what it means. Enlightened moderation was a term to appease those who were relating terrorism to Islam. And unfortunately, as a result, there was this perception that there are different types of Islam. There's some radical Islam, there's some moderate, there's some liberal Islam. There is only one Islam, Islam of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is no other Islam. In human communities, in every human community, you have your moderates, you have your liberals, you have your conservatives, you have your fanatics. Every human community has that. The man who walked into the mosque in New Zealand clearly was not a normal person. So, but why no other human community was branded with their religion? 1.5 billion people branded by these terms. And there always should be self-criticism, because that's how you improve. Unless you analyze your mistakes, you can't improve yourself. So that was the biggest mistake we made. We did not challenge this narrative. And guess who suffered? Muslims living in Western countries. They kept suffering, because any incident would happen, any terrorist incident by a Muslim immediately meant that every Muslim became branded. When 9/11 happened, I still remember, people were petrified in Pakistan that I hope there was no Pakistani involved. How could how could whole community be responsible for some fanatical deed by some extremists? So therefore, this was it was one of the worst periods for Muslims living in non-Muslim countries. And then in 1989, there was a book called Satanic Verses, written by a Muslim who knew, because he came from a Muslim family, he knew the reaction in the Muslim world amongst the Muslims if he insulted or mocked or ridiculed our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. But what happened after 1989 was rather than again the Muslim world coming up with an intellectual narrative, trying to explain to them that why do we feel, why are we so hurt when a holy prophet is ridiculed? Why does it hurt us so much? Living in and knowing the Western societies, I knew why they couldn't understand, because they do not treat religion like we do. Jesus Christ is not treated the way we in the West, the way we treat our holy prophet here. So they couldn't understand what was going on. Why were there demonstrations? Why were there death threats to Salman Rushdie? So they kept thinking that the Muslims do not allow freedom of expression. So Muslim world is intolerant. It doesn't allow freedom of expression. They were able to vilify our religion. And yet there was no coherent response from the Muslim world. And therefore, we kept into the cycle. Every few years, there would be some cartoons, insulting cartoons against our prophet. Every few years, there would be something insulting him. We would respond. There would be some act of extremists. They would not respond. So this Islamophobia, this cycle, kept getting worse. And poor Muslims living in Western societies kept suffering. So that's why I'm really pleased that for the first time it has been acknowledged that Islamophobia is a reality and something needs to be done about it. And from now onwards, we hope that we will be able to put forward a narrative that why it hurts us so much. And honorable foreign ministers, let me just say that I only came into politics 25 years ago. I was watching this Islamophobia building up in Western societies. But two, I wanted my country. We were the only country which became independent in the name of Islam. And so, the objective resolution of our founding fathers was to make an Islamic welfare state based on the state of Medina. So I came into politics 25 years ago because that was my goal. And just in this August gathering, let me just say, in the history of mankind, there was never a more just and humane state. Unfortunately, our children don't know about it. Even we in Muslim countries don't know that the modern state our Prophet created. Forget about Western countries or non-Muslims. How would they know about it when we ourselves don't understand that he created a state which laid the foundation of one of the greatest civilizations in human history for the next few hundred years. And that foundation was laid in the state of Medina. So what was that foundation? This is again what most people don't understand. And I'm glad that Foreign Minister Wang Yi is here, because I want people to understand what was it that caused this great revolution, one of the greatest revolutions of all times. The state of Medina was one of the greatest revolutions. What was it? Number one, our Prophet was given the title in our holy book, the Quran, as Rahmatul lil Alameen, mercy for mankind, not mercy for Muslims. He came as a mercy for mankind. He came to unite mankind, not divide mankind. Allah for Muslims is Rahmat Rabbul Alameen, not Rabbul Muslimeen. We do not understand, we Muslims don't understand the great mission our Prophet came in this world for, to unite humanity. The Charter of Medina was signed with Jews, with Christians, with Sabians, and with pagans. All became part of a human community. We don't even realize that in 10 years which the Prophet came to Medina and then he left this world, people think that it was, through conquest and through the sword. Hardly anyone knows that in these 10 years, there were only about 1,200 people who were killed in battles. In these 10 years, 1,200 people died and Islam spread all over Arabia. So it was a revolution of ideas. He created a new system. So the state of Medina, he created the best rule of law. The basis of a civilized society is rule of law. His saying that even if my daughter commits a crime, she will be punished. No one is above law. His saying that many nations before you have been destroyed, where the powerful crooks were exempted, were given immunity, and poor crooks were put into jail. If you look at the world right now, Excellencies, I can tell you, just look at all the poor countries. Look at the countries which have poverty. There will be one thing in common. They cannot catch the white-collar criminals. They only end up putting petty criminals in jail. This is the biggest problem which our Prophet, peace be upon him, predicted almost 1,500 years ago. The developing world is poor, not because they lack resources, because they cannot put the powerful criminals in jail. There's a fact-type panel report by Secretary General of the United Nations. According to this report, and this will shock all of you, that every year, $1.6 trillion leave the poor countries and end up in tax havens and in the developed world. $1.6 trillion according to the fact-type panel report of the UN Secretary General. Just imagine what is going on. Poor countries are being robbed simply because we cannot put the powerful criminals in jail. We cannot bring them under the rule of law. This is what our Prophet predicted. And this was the state of Medina where he set up this system of rule of law, no one above. And two of the first four Khalifas, two of the first four heads of state of Medina ended up in court of law. And one of the most revered and respected figures of Islam, who was the fourth Khalifa, he loses a case against a Jewish citizen because the judge refused to accept the testimony of his son. This was the justice system there, which laid the foundation of this great civilization. So what does it show? Number one, that minorities were equal citizens. They were equal citizens in front of law. There was no discrimination. Secondly, it shows that a common citizen could win a case against the head of state. No one was above law. This is 600 years before the Magna Carta was signed in England, which was the beginning of the democratic struggle of Britain. And it took them years before they could actually bring their head of state under the rule of law. This is what happened in the state of Medina. It was ahead of its time. And then it was the first welfare state in the history of mankind. Compassion, humanity. It was a state which took care of its weak, its orphans, its widows, its poor people. It was the first time pensions were introduced in the state of Medina. They took care of the old people. A compassionate state. A state where they wanted to please the Almighty. How do you please the Almighty Allah? By looking after His human beings, especially the weak. This is what happened in the state of Medina. And today, I feel sad whenever I go to Scandinavia. I see what a welfare state should be in all over the Muslim world. Look at humanity there. Look at the way they look after the weak. In fact, sometimes I'm sad because they look after the animals better than some of us look after our human beings. And remember, he's Rahmatul Alameen, so whoever listened to his message, whichever human community will prosper. It doesn't matter because he's for all humanity, he brought the message of mercy. If you look at Switzerland, in the rule of law index, Switzerland is 99%. 99%. So with hardly any resources, it is one of the most prosperous countries in the world. So as I said, anyone who goes by the model of Medina will prosper. And then, quest for knowledge. Foreign Minister Wang Yi, you'd be surprised, one of our prophets saying, he said, even if you have to go to China to learn and quest for knowledge, you must go there. Now, first, China at that time was center of knowledge, but it meant even risking your life. Going from, at that time, Arabia to China meant you might not come back. So that was the quest of knowledge. You have to seek knowledge from cradle to grave. He sparked off this great knowledge revolution. For hundreds of years, the top scientists were Muslims because they thought quest for knowledge was a sacred duty. Look at the situation in the Muslim world today. How much do we have a quest for knowledge? And then we get so much, wherever you go, Muslims are, that our women are, we imprison our women have no rights. And sometimes, it almost seemed that the US invaded Afghanistan to liberate their women. There was no other reason except to liberate their women. Somehow our women are in prison. Let me just tell you that it was a revolutionary move by our Prophet that women were given inheritance rights. They were empowered. In Europe, even 100 years ago, the women barely got their inheritance rights. 1,500 years ago, women were given their rights. And no one seems to know this. And sadly, cultural issues are equated to our religion. We cannot explain, sometimes Western people say, they confuse culture with religion. I'm sad to say in Pakistan, we discovered 70% of our women do not get inheritance rights. So we have especially had to pass law to enforce that women must get their inheritance rights. This is 1,500 years later. And no one knows this. Slaves, honorable foreign ministers, nowhere in human history has this happened. That slaves became kings. The Mamluks were slaves who became kings in Egypt. In India, there was slave dynasty, they became kings. Why? Because the Prophet said, treat your slaves as family members. Best to free them, if not, treat them as equal family members. So he was the greatest human being that ever stepped foot. There'll never be a human being like them. Anyone close to the Prophet became leaders. If you read the book, The Arab Conquest, everyone became a leader, whoever was near the Prophet. And our generations don't understand that, and neither have we been able to explain to anyone else. Let's not confuse Muslim imperialism with the 10 years of Prophet in Medina. Let's not confuse that, because that was not what the Prophet preached, where the Muslims went all over the world conquering. It is not what the Prophets, the whole revolution was of ideas. Honorable foreign ministers, one of the ideas of OIC is to protect Islamic values. So now I will say something which is completely different. I believe that Islamic values never have been so much under threat as they are right now. And I bring this to this August assembly because when I became the Prime Minister, I asked the police chief, asked him what the crime chart. I was amazed to note that sex crime, child abuse and rape is the fastest growing crime in this country. So we did further investigation. We discovered that the mobile phone, the sort of pornographic material available on the mobile phone to children, this has never happened in human history. So the material available is causing havoc in our society without us knowing. Parents don't know what's happening when a child goes into his room or something. They don't know what he's watching on his mobile phone. It is very important that this August forum, we should plan how to combat this because it is already having a huge impact. We have a rise in divorces. We all know that the more vulgarity, the more a society gets permissive, it has a direct impact on the family system. One of the most important things about Islam is that our religion protects the family system. We have values like we respect parents. We have respect for our teachers. But the culture that is coming through, social media, we really need to think carefully, how are we going to protect our generations? I have formed in Pakistan a Rahmatul Alameen authority of scholars. The whole purpose is how are we going to give an alternate point of view to our children, cartoons. How do we, because children get influenced from that age onwards. How do we strengthen our children against this unpredictable social media revolution? How do we know where it is going? So I think that I thought at this meeting I should mention, because we need to start thinking about alternate media, how we can combat. You can't stop social media, but we can give our children, fortify them, strengthen them ethically and morally. Now I come to two important political issues. One is Palestine and the other is Kashmir. Honorable foreign ministers, we have failed both the Palestinians and the people of Kashmir. I'm sad to say that we have been able to make no impact at all. They don't take us seriously. We are a divided house, and those powers know it. We are 1.5 billion people, and yet our voice to stop this blatant injustice is insignificant. We are not talking about conquering some country. We're simply talking about the human rights of the people of Kashmir and Palestine, the international law, which is on their side, United Nations Security Council resolutions that back their right. In Kashmir, the international community promised them the right to decide their own destiny through a plebiscite. That right was never given to them. In fact, the special status of Kashmir was taken away illegally by India on 5th August 2019. Nothing happened because they feel no pressure. They feel we can make a resolution and then, back to our usual business. I'm not talking about altering our foreign policies. All of us countries have our different foreign policies. But on core issues, I'm asking the OIC that unless we have a united front, we will keep these abuses will happen. Like in Palestine, it's daylight robbery going on in Palestine. The only hope I have is now because of social media, first time in Western countries, there's awareness of what's going on to the poor Palestinians. That is so far, much more than the OIC, it's the mobile phone and the spread of information of the injustices being done to the Palestinians. That is the best, at the moment, the best way to protect them, not us. In Kashmir, it's a war crime, according to the 4th Geneva Convention, to change the demography of an occupied land. India is changing the demography of Kashmir by making the Muslims from a majority to a minority, by bringing in settlers from outside. This is a war crime. Yet no one has pushed about it. Neither India has pushed nor Israel, because they think we are ineffective. So, honorable foreign ministers, let me just say that the way the world is headed, I'm afraid it's headed the wrong way. There's a Cold War almost started. There is a chance of world being divided into blocks. We 1.5 billion people, unless we are united, unless we take a united stand, we'll be nowhere. As what I'm scared to say where the future is headed right now. Before I come to Ukraine, I just want to talk about Afghanistan. It is extremely important that we stabilize Afghanistan. After 40 years, and no nation has suffered as the people of Afghanistan. 40 years of conflict. Finally, there is no conflict going on. The only danger now to Afghanistan is that through the sanctions and non-recognition, they might end up having a humanitarian crisis. Already the people are falling below the poverty line. Already there's a brain drain going on. So it's extremely important that we help the people of Afghanistan. And I say this because a stable Afghanistan is the only way, I repeat, it's the only way we are going to be able to stop international terrorism from Afghan soil. No other country is going to be able to do it. Let's not be delusional that some other country will come in and sort of through drones or something fight terrorism. It's not going to happen. The only hope is a stable Afghanistan government that can take care of international terrorism. I want to add a word of caution. Anyone who knows the Afghan character should be cautioned that please do not push the people of Afghanistan to do things where they feel that their sovereignty is being threatened. They are very proud, independent-minded people. They have always fought for their sovereignty for hundreds of years. They do not like the idea that someone is dictating to them. So I would caution that let's help them, let's encourage them, let's get them involved in the international community. And I believe that the people of Afghanistan are strong enough to evolve and go in the right direction. But please, let's remember that the Afghan character does not like outside interference. And finally, I come to Ukraine. I'm, like I think everyone here and the rest of the world, we're all worried about what's going on there. May I suggest that the OIC, during its discussions, the foreign ministers, we should think about how we, represent 1.5 billion people, how we can mediate, how we can bring about a ceasefire, how we can try and put an end to the conflict. I'm going to meet His Excellency Wang Yi after this, and I want to discuss how maybe OIC, along with China, how we can all step in and try to stop this conflict, which is going to have, if it keeps going the way it is, it will have great consequences for the rest of the world. I have already, as the head of the government here, I can tell you that we are already suffering. Oil prices have gone up. Gas prices have shot up. Wheat prices have gone up because of this war. And if this keeps continuing, this is only going to get worse. So therefore, we should, all the countries which are non-partisan, we are in a special position to be able to influence this conflict. So as I said, I would want the foreign ministers, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, please discuss with the other foreign ministers, and I will discuss with His Excellency, the Chinese foreign minister, how we can all, as a bloc, OIC and China, how we can influence the events in Ukraine and stop this and have some ceasefire and resolve this conflict. Lastly, honorable foreign ministers, let me again say what a pleasure it was to welcome you to my beautiful country. I want to end by saying, again, I repeat, that the world is moving in a direction which is sadly worrisome for all of us. In bloc politics, in Cold War, and let's just 1.5 billion people we keep underestimating the strength we have. Somehow we lack self-belief. As a sportsman, I can tell you that a team that has self-belief will defeat a team that is far more talented but doesn't have self-belief. We don't have self-belief. We somehow look to others to help us and get justice. But as where the world is headed, it is extremely important that we get united and on certain core issues take a stand. And let's not be dragged into this, into blocks, into the conflicts. We should stay as a bloc and show our power in bringing about peace rather than becoming part of some conflict. Thank you very much.
दुनिया इस्लामोफोबिया के वाक़यात पर खामोश रही। इस्लाम का किसी तौर पर भी दहशतगर्दी और इंतहा पसंदी से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं। वज़ीर आज़म इमरान खान OIC इजलास से खिताब कर रहे थे।
With your words of wisdom, I'm confident that your thought-provoking address will guide the deliberations of this 48th session for the next 2 days. Excellencies, we take a break for lunch and prayers. Since the inaugural session took much more time than expected, we will now reconvene at 3:15. The next segment would be off camera, open only to the members and observer states.
Delegates, I would request you to please remain seated while the heads of delegation proceed to the lunch. The heads of delegation.
इंतहा पसंद सोच किसी की भी हो सकती है, मगर इस्लाम को ही क्यों इससे जोड़ा गया? आवाज़ उठाई गई है वज़ीर आज़म इमरान खान की जानिब से OIC के इजलास में। इसके साथ साथ मसला कश्मीर भी उठा दिया गया है। साथ ही आपको बताएं कि उन्होंने ये भी कहा कि नामूस रिसालत के ख़िलाफ़ होने वाले इक़दामात पर उम्मा की तरफ से मौसर रद्द-ए-अमल नहीं दिया गया है। और साथ ही साथ कश्मीर के हवाले से भी वज़ीर आज़म इमरान खान की जानिब से आवाज़ उठाई गई है, क्योंकि आज का इजलास अफ़गानिस्तान और कश्मीर के हवाले से, वहाँ पर जो इशूज़ हैं उनके हवाले से भी बड़ा अहमियत का हामिल था। पाकिस्तान की जानिब से अब बाकायदा तौर पर इस इजलास में इन तमाम मौज़ूआत पर आवाज़ उठा दी गई है। खालिद अजीम साहब हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं, उनसे बात करेंगे। खालिद साहब, मसला कश्मीर उठा दिया गया है, एक मरतबा फिर वज़ीर आज़म की जानिब से बड़ा अच्छा कदम, इसको यकीनी तौर पे अप्रिशिएट किया जाना चाहिए, क्या कहेंगे आप?
देखिए, मैं समझता हूँ कि इसका एक और पहलू है। जहाँ तक मसला कश्मीर की बात है, OIC का शायद ही कोई ऐसा इजलास हो जिसमें कश्मीर के ऊपर बात नहीं होती, रेजोल्यूशन मंजूर नहीं होती, बयानात नहीं आते। और ख़ासतौर पर जो इससे पहले 5 अगस्त 2019 के जो वाक़यात हैं, उसके बाद तो तसल्सल के साथ पाकिस्तान भी जोर देता रहा है और वहाँ से बयानात भी आते रहे। आज जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने बात कही है, उसकी रूह ये है कि ये खाली हम बयानात तो देते हैं, लेकिन जो रिएक्शन हमारा होना चाहिए था भारत के उन इक़दामात के खिलाफ बहैसियत उम्मत मुसलमान, वो सामने नहीं आया। और उस अंदाज में भारत को कहीं कोई परेशानी नहीं है, आप ऐसे 20 बयानात और दे दें, उसको कोई इससे फर्क नहीं पड़ता। बुनियादी तौर पे उनकी तरफ से ये एक काल है कि کہ ہمارے کوئی عملی اقدامات ایسے ہونے چاہیے جس سے بھارت کو اس معاملے میں تکلیف پہنچے اور اس کو پتہ چلے کہ کشمیر کے اوپر امت مسلمہ جو ہے وہ اضطراب کا شکار ہے اور اس کو پریشانی ہے اور وہ اس